Welcome back to another episode of Pastoring in the Digital Parish, your source and point of connection for building your digital ministry toolkit and bringing your congregation into the digital age. This is our last episode of Season 6, so we'll be taking a break for a couple months following this incredibly informative and inspiring session. I'm your host, Ryan Dunn, and today we are thrilled to welcome Jevon Caldwell-Gross, a seasoned pastor and fellow practitioner in digital ministry. In this episode, we dive deep into how it all started and how it's going with Pastor J in digital ministry. We explore the challenges and opportunities of reaching people outside of Sunday mornings and implementing strategies like master classes. Pastor J shares invaluable insights on adapting preaching styles to engage the online audience, the importance of creating content beyond traditional services, the power of masterclasses, and the need for pastors to learn how to reach people through various digital platforms. So stay tuned as we explore the fascinating journey of Jevon Caldwell-Gross and discover how digital ministry is shaping the future of the church. This session of Pastoring in the Digital Parish is presented by Safer Sanctuaries, nurturing trust within faith communities. That's a new and comprehensive resource that continues the tradition of Safe Sanctuaries ministry by building on its trusted policies and procedures. To learn more, go to safersanctuaries.org or give them a call, 1-800-972-0433. Here's some info on our special guest for this session. The Reverend Dr. Jevon Caldwell-Gross has been a transformational ministry thought leader for over a decade. Serving in a variety of contexts ranging from urban cities to multicultural suburban communities, Pastor J is known for his ability to connect with different audiences and make the gospel accessible and practical. Pastor J's journey has brought him to one of the largest United Methodist churches in the country, St. Luke's United Methodist Church, located in Indianapolis, Indiana. There he serves as the teaching pastor and the online campus pastor. As a pastor, author, and professor, his mission is and always has been to equip churches and congregational leaders for relevant and effective ministry in a rapidly changing society. He's got a lot of passion for seeing the church reach into the community, and that passion's going to spread through this conversation. So let's get to it, talking with Reverend Dr. Jevon Caldwell-Gross. Pastor Jay, we are looking forward to learning about your practice of digital ministry, but first let's start in learning a little bit about you. How goes it with your soul today?
You know, my soul is great today. It's kids have just started school. My wife just finished her first year being at Noblesville First United Methodist Church. We had a great vacation this summer, and so we're back in the swing of things. And so my soul is great. I'm excited.
Good. All right. The refreshments there. You don't feel drained out after having to come back to the office after a vacation?
Not at all. Not at all.
Oh, wonderful.
I'm running.
Well, your official title is teaching pastor and online community pastor at St. Luke's in Indianapolis. I'd love to learn about how you fell into that role or were pulled into that role. Like when you were hired at St. Luke's, was online campus pastor part of the title?
So when I first got to St. Luke's, my wife and I were pastoring out of New Jersey. She was on the conference staff there, and we got an invitation to come to St. Luke's as a clergy couple, actually. So my official title when I started here was a teaching pastor, and I had some family ministries responsibilities, but we sort of changed after that. And originally I was only supposed to preach around 6 to 8 times a year, but because we have 5 services on a Sunday morning, our senior pastor, Pastor Rob, would be in one service and I would be in the other. So I ended up preaching almost 3 or 4 times a month. And so regular preaching became a part of my responsibility. However, after we did some consulting around how we grow as a congregation, I shifted, and part of my responsibilities was supervising our communications ministry, our videographer, our social media. And so there was sort of a small migration in terms of the online ministry. But what's interesting is that before COVID, we would average around 600 to 700 people who worship with us online on a Sunday morning. but we didn't put a lot of emphasis into our online community. We didn't really strategize around it. We didn't put a whole lot of, I mean, it was sort of more of an organic, more of an organic move. But when COVID happened, that's when we totally switched, and my responsibilities became more evident and more focused into our online campus, because now 50% of our congregation is still worshiping with us online. We saw approximately 3,000 people service Sunday before COVID, and now we're still seeing around those numbers, but we have around 1,500 people who worship with us online every single Sunday. And so my responsibilities changed in terms of making sure that we develop a strategy and a cohesive strategy around how we still minister to those persons, to 1,500 people in the congregation. Again, these are not just people who, and there's a wide variety of people who join us from different states, from different countries, and even the person who lives down the street. But because of their schedules change, we are their church home and church family. And so my role dramatically shifted, and now we're trying to find innovative ways to help people stay engaged when Sunday morning in person is not their primary way of finding community and connection, and how they live out their faith.
Of those 1,500 people who are primarily online congregants, what percentage would you say are people who were, I guess, regular analog participants in the life of the church before COVID who have now gone primarily online?
I think that's a hard number to tell. And I think that this is a larger conversation for a lot of churches, and not just for us as well, but the importance of data and the importance of how do we encourage people to be known. And before, I'll give you an example, before COVID, Sunday morning, we would ask people to sign in. And signing in became a big thing. And it was our way of asking people to give us their information. And it was their way, when they signed, they were saying, I want to be known. I want to be known by you. And so now the conversation is, how do we encourage those people to want to be known when there's no in-person connection? And so how do we now develop, content or develop innovative ways so that people are moving from an anonymous worshiper to giving us their information? Data has become so important in this day and age in ministry, and the importance of getting people's names and email addresses and phone numbers is absolutely vital. In fact, we've sort of made a shift, because asking people to be known before COVID was really us saying, we want you to give us your information for our sake. we now the conversation is, and a lot of places do this. They will say, we have something to offer to you. We have something vital that we think would help you out, and for you to help you to answer the critical questions about life and faith. So we would like for you to give us your information so that you can get something that benefits you, as opposed to give us your information because this benefits the church, right?
Yeah.
So we approach people, and how we make how are we making being known accessible and easy, and something that doesn't just benefit the congregation, but it benefits the people who are out there. Again, data is just really, really important, and ways to make people known. It's just part of a larger conversation. So no, I don't think we have who was part of it before and who is part of it now. I think we're still in the beginning of stages of building that database.
Have you found something so far at St. Luke's that you're able to offer where people in the digital space will respond? Like, is there a piece of content like, hey, we have this 5-part teaching series that we can send you if you provide us some information? Is there something like that?
Yes. So here's something that I would say congregations need to really start with. And number one is, what are the critical questions about life and faith that your congregation and community are asking? Right? What are the critical concerns and questions And I think that's just a great place to start. And I give an example of something that we tried, and we tried it from, and we got this from a different church. There was a church out in Cincinnati, Ohio called Crossroads Church. And I noticed I'm a church junkie. And so I could see where, doing what. I'm like the guy at the gym who's always playing basketball. Or you just, And so I was watching different churches to figuring out what they were doing, what are the new trends, and I noticed Crossroads had something called a 21-day adventure, and they were saying that normally people can change their habits if they do something for 21 days, and so they were inviting people to go on a 21-day journey with Scripture and with faith. But in order to do that, you had to sign up to receive the resources and information. And it was right on their front page. And I thought, wow, what a great way it was, again, wasn't, worship. You opened up in their website and that's what it was. And I thought, what a great way to invite people to become known. And because it benefits them, it was about their development. It was all centered around them. And so one of the things that we tried, we did a sermon series, and we had a resource around anxiety, different ways that you can deal with anxiety. And throughout the sermon series, every week we created a resource page for people that in order to go deeper into the sermon, we developed some additional resources that you could use throughout the week. And so we realized, but you had to give your name and email address for it. And then we realized, okay, we're not getting people to sign in on Sunday, but wow, when we created some content that specifically benefited them, not for the church, but it was helping them answer the critical questions about life and faith, we were getting a lot better response off of that. Again, the approach wasn't just, let's create something that benefits the church, but let's create something that benefits those people who are in a congregation and those who are looking for places to be connected with.
Well, I want to explore a little bit more the learning process of moving into a digital first or a digitally minded ministry. When you first started in your role, maybe even before you made it official with the title, do you feel like you had some training in your background that was preparing you for digital ministry? No, it was a lot of learning on the fly.
This is the great part about, and I'll try to tell pastors about this as well, is that the great thing about the digital world is that we're all starting from ground zero. I mean, you don't get any training. There's no seminary that trains you 5 or 10 years ago to do ministry after a global pandemic. I mean, maybe they had some experience with tech, but the fullness of it, none of us are really trained at it. And so I would say some of the things that have been helpful for me was, number one, I was already on social media. And so the social media world wasn't intimidating to me because a lot of my connections that I had with people, it already included some hybrid context. And so people I went to high school with, college with, grad school with, we didn't see each other on Sunday. But there were, my mother lives in East Lansing. So the way that she communicates with her grandchildren has a hybrid context. And so then there's also another book that I read, Ryan, that was really, really good. It was called Canoeing the Mountains. And it's not a book about digital ministry, but it is a book about ministry and having the courage to go to uncharted territories. And I would say that some training wasn't just a digital ministry, but it was moving into unfamiliar places and having to learn very quickly. And so I think that is the challenge to moving into digital spaces, because sometimes people are trying to figure out what previous experience do I have. You don't have to have any, but I think you have to have thirst and a knowledge to learn and to try new things and to fail and be really bad at it. I'll give an example. When we started,
yeah, we'd love to hear the horror stories. Bring it out. Yep.
Started COVID, and I would have to record a sermon. It would sometimes take me 2 hours to record one sermon. But we had to, because we have a traditional and a contemporary service, I had to record two different sermons in two different spaces. So it would take me, and I know our video people dislike me for that. But I did not know how to transform my preaching style to an online audience. It would just take me so long, but I had to learn how to do that. I had to learn how to be organic, to learn to just how to create online content. We started these things called mobile messages, and so there were these 3-minute clips that I would send out, just about every other day during COVID. And, how do you take a sermon and break it down into 3 minutes? How do you take something that will help answer the critical questions about life and faith to 2 minutes? Now we're doing these things on social media. Now Instagram says it has to be below 90
Yeah,
seconds
right. Mm-hmm.
create. So, but it's about trial. It's about trial and error, and that's what I really want to encourage people. Therefore, a lot of pastors, we were trained how to do ministry from a pulpit. We weren't trained how to create content outside of Sunday morning. So now your writing is just important. Um, so especially for pastors, the critical way that you can reach your congregation and your community is sometimes not on Sunday morning. So how do
Mm.
you use the vast places and the variety of platforms? Because for me, seminary was around how do you do ministry from the platform? How do you do ministry on Sunday morning? How do you
Mm.
give a great message? Well, for a lot of people, they'll never hear it. But now, how do we be innovative to help people answer those critical questions about life and faith through other platforms, through blogs and vlogs and master classes and all these different ways? Those are the things that we weren't taught. But
Yeah.
again, I think if we are able to learn and be willing to be humble and sometimes start at ground zero, uh, and to learn how to be the novice again, I think there's some great possibility in ministry.
That masterclass idea is something that's really intriguing to me. I feel like as the church, we really have just started to break into that space. Have you tried that out much in your practice of ministry?
You know what? We haven't tried that out yet. And here's something that when I realized there's possibility in it, there were two examples that I realized. Number one, I was going through Facebook one day and I saw that there was a company that was doing different master classes with people like Steph Curry, um, President Barack Obama, and all these different, well-known people,
Yeah.
and doing these short classes, based on how to's. And I realized that, and then I would see the comments and how many people would sign up for it. Then I saw another colleague of mine, Pastor Darius Daniels, who started doing master classes on things like how to read the Bible. And there were thousands and thousands of people. Because again, you're trying to help people answer the critical questions about life and faith. And so there are some things that you can't say on Sunday morning. You only get 30 minutes. You only get 52 Sundays. But if something as simple as, how to date after your 40s. Man, a lot of people want to know that.
Mm.
Right? But man, here's a master class on dating, on parenting. And I think it is the language of the people that's in our community. Because if you ask people to go to a Bible study, now you just limited the scope of who's going to be attracted to that. But
Yeah.
if you say, here's a master class on all, now you're bringing in common language. And so, again, for a lot of pastors and a lot of I would even say for pastors, the shifting is now not just preacher, but about content creation. And so, how do we now take um, the ideas and the church's ability to insert itself into the conversations the community is having? Because I do think the church has something to say about how people are living their lives and what they need and how they can be connected. but now to format it and frame it in a way that's accessible to people, I think it's a great possibility. Again, Bible studies, I think in some ways are fading out,
Hmm.
but in terms of people attending master classes and a lot of different ways that people receive information has dramatically changed. And I think the church just has to get on that bandwagon um, and use these resources.
Yeah. Okay. So as you imagine these master classes, do you see that as being like a synchronously timed Zoom call where people are together, or is it more like you're going to pre-record the content and put it out there for people, and there might be discussion around it in other digital forums?
Well, I think you can do it both because here's what we've learned during COVID. So during COVID, we had a goal of reaching over 2,000 first-time guests. So I think it was 2020 and 2020. And when I went back and looked at the data, Ryan, I realized that most of our first-time guests came outside of Sunday morning. Now, let me tell you, so here's the switch in terms of how we approach ministry. Because like St. Luke's, like most churches, we put a large amount of our people, money, and time resources on what day?
Sunday, yeah.
Right? But then we realize, and we have a plan for Sunday morning, meetings about Sunday morning. I mean, it's like our big day. But then I realized, looking at the data, that the majority of people we were reaching happened outside of Sunday morning. So we didn't have a clear strategy, and there was not as the resources in terms of time and people resources, it was not analogous to what we were putting on Sunday morning. And so it dawned on me and said, man, what if we had a strategy, and I sort of coined this term, not just Sunday, trying to help people look at how do they strategize outside of Sunday morning? Because for many of our churches and our communities of faith, the amount of people that we're going to reach on Sunday are limited. But what if we had a strategy to how we reach people outside of Sunday? And so with something like a master class, I think it's a great way to connect with new people in the community and to help our current congregations to stay engaged. So it's twofold, increasing engagement and increasing the reach. So with something like a master class, which gives you great potential to do any topic, it can be a live Zoom class. But the great thing about technology is that you can repurpose that. And then you can put that same Zoom class on a place where people can get it outside of that particular hour. Because sometimes with the material that the church has used to creating, if you missed Bible study, you missed it. you know,
right.
If you missed the experience the church had to offer, then you were just out of luck. But now what digital ministry has the potential to do is to now help people to engage in the content or the experience outside of the allotted time. And so, I think you got to be strategic about when they do that. So I think the possibilities are endless about when you can do master classes or a lot of different things. Because now for my kids are heavily into soccer, but for the parents who are busy, man, the conversations about parenting are great. But now you've given them the opportunity of an on-demand experience that they can benefit from outside of a particular hour or something.
Yeah, okay. So that they can interface with that stuff when they're sitting in the stands waiting for practice to be over. That kind of.
They got time to kill.
Yeah.
What better way than that? For the church to be strategic about how to speak into their lives.
Hey there, I need to drop in here with an important reminder that as justice-seeking Christians, we have a duty to protect the most vulnerable amongst us. Safer Sanctuaries, nurturing trust within faith communities, helps us do just that. It is a new and comprehensive resource that continues the tradition of Safe Sanctuaries ministry by building on the trusted policies and procedures that have guided churches over the past 25 years. This resource contains theological grounding for the work of abuse prevention, psychological insights about abuse and abuse prevention, basic guidelines for risk reduction, age-level specific guidance, and step-by-step instructions on how to develop, revise, update, and implement an abuse prevention plan in your church or organization. For Christians, resisting evil and doing justice are the ways that we live and serve Jesus. Safer Sanctuaries provides help to do just that by framing this work as a life-giving, community-enhancing, and proactive endeavor. It enables communities to be empowered and to flourish as they develop and implement policies and procedures that make everyone safer. So to learn more, go to safersanctuaries.org or call 1-800-972-0433. Check them out and build a little more care and safety into your community. And now, let's get back to our conversation with Reverend Dr. Jevon Caldwell-Gross. You brought up data a few times. Seems like in addition to being a church junkie, you might be a little bit of a data junkie too. In your role as a campus pastor, as an online campus pastor, are there specific points of data that are really intriguing to you or that you tend to focus on?
So I would say every congregation is different.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we'd like to start with data is, you are what you measure. And so there's just no way of helping people to stay engaged without looking at some kind of metrics. And so metrics gives you an idea of where you are, where you're going, where you're starting. So there's a couple of metrics that we often look at that just gives us an idea of how we are connecting with people. So for us, Sunday morning is still a large way that we reach our online community. So we look at our Sunday morning numbers and how many people engage with us online. Now, what that often tells us, again, Sunday morning numbers can be everywhere in terms of some people do they take the attendance and times about 1.5 or the times it. When I'm looking at the data, I don't look so much at that, but what I do look at is I look at trends. And so, I give an example of what it might be for me. So there are times when our in-person attendance is higher than normal. And I'll go back and look at our online attendance and it will remain steady. So what that lets me know is that our online attendance is not just people who, in order to grow our in-person attendance, it doesn't mean that we have to lower the attendance of our online worshipers. And so our online worshipers are there to stay. It's been steady for the past 2 years since our congregation has been open for in-person worship. And so when we're looking at trends to see, hey, maybe if we can just get, for instance, a lot of churches think, if we can just get our online worshipers to move to in-person attendance, that'll get it back.
Right.
I'm looking to say, no, you got to reach new people. The ability to reach new people is going to help your in-person worship. It's not trying to get your online worshipers back into the seats again. And so that's what our data is telling me. Number two, I think sometimes I look at what people respond to on social media. I give an example. So with digital ministry now, people now have a choice of the content that they connect with. And I give an example of what I mean by this. So I call this the playlist culture. So what I mean by playlist culture is, there used to be a time of day when you would buy a CD. Like when I would buy a Michael Jackson CD, I listened to all Michael Jackson songs for a whole hour. But with a playlist, I can listen to Michael Jackson, I can listen to Maverick City Music, Chris Tomlin, anything.
Yeah.
You can now curate different genres, different styles based on my interest. And I think people are consuming things and connecting with things that they relate to, right? They don't have to be stuck by just going to one church for everything for all the time. And so now that gives them some different option of what they can do. And what I think this really helps people to do is now they're more value driven. So churches, I think, and we saw this during COVID with St. Luke's, is that so many people were connecting to our congregation because of certain values that we have. So I looked at how people are connecting with the things that we post on social media from a value perspective. Who is putting us in their playlist based off of that. And I give you a prime example of what this looks like. So on Easter Sunday, we might have 15 shares of our service, and that's a good number for us. But if we posted something online about how we are impacting people in our community, we might have 80 shares. So what this is telling me is that there's a high value in our congregation about the church being involved in the community, about the church making a difference in the world. So now I'm able to look on social media, I'm able to look at those numbers and see, man, not only what are people engaging in, but what are they sharing? What are they proud of? Right? What would they give their time, their money, and their energy to? So it may not be a Sunday morning service, but it might be some other value-driven things. When we post about us being open or anti-racist, tons of engagement. So that's helping them answer the critical questions about life and faith. So I look at our social media to see what people are engaging in and who's engaging. And I'm sorry, I give you this last one. There's a misconception that online ministry only connects with younger demographics. But I'm able to look at our social media numbers on Facebook, and I'm able to say the largest our audience of our Facebook is women over the age of 65. And so that gives me an idea of who's connecting with us and the possibilities and the reach that we're able to have. So I would say for congregations, think about what you find important and then measure that. And so we've sort of did the same thing. And I look at a few of those to see where we're going, who we're reaching, and why.
Do you find at St. Luke's that you're concentrating more on specific platforms? So you mentioned Facebook. Is that something that you're really kind of dedicated to, and that then there are other platforms that you assume or have drawn a conclusion that it's just not for you?
Yeah. So here's what data said. So we realized that our target audience, while we are a larger congregation, we went through a consulting period, and they said in order to reach maximum growth, you gotta really reach that demographic between 30 and 45. And so what that data told us when we looked on Facebook was that our Facebook efforts were not reaching the demographic that our consultant told us that, and so it was challenging to us because we thought, in order to reach them, we got to be really active on this platform. And so we realized that in order to reach people, we had to reach them where they already were. 30 and 45-year-olds who were not spending a lot of time on Facebook anymore. And so if ministry really is, again, this is really about ministry and gospel. If ministry really is incarnational, and, how do we be incarnate and present where people are? We realize we cannot be incarnational with the demographic of 30 and 45 if we spend all of our time on Facebook. So we asked the question, where could we be incarnational? And it was why we started putting a lot more time into TikTok. It was why we started putting a lot more time into Instagram. It wasn't because it was just a popular thing to do, but it was because this is where people already are. And so how do we help them answer their critical questions about life and faith by meeting them in a platform that they're already familiar with? It's almost like saying, if we knew that 30 and 45-year-olds were hanging out at the park across the street, we would build programs about how we connect with them at the park around the street. We wouldn't go to the park around the corner. And digital ministry and social media the same way, is that we were clear about who we were trying to reach. So then that determined which platform we were already on. So if you're hearing this, I'm hoping you're realizing it's not just about being on everyone, but it's about having a strategy and knowing who you are trying to reach and why, and then developing content on that particular platform.
Whenever.
Yeah. So I just think it's just a way of us being very particular about where we put the content. I mean, there's a reason now why we create content just for Instagram. because it gives us an opportunity now. They're not showing up in droves on Sunday morning, but we connect with hundreds of them by the content that we can produce on social media. And let me say this to people. When we accept new members into the church, we often ask, how did you find out about St. Luke's? And a growing number of them have started to say, because they heard or saw something or read something off of social media, and that got their attention. And so there are just many ways of reaching new audiences, and sometimes just being very strategic about where we choose to be incarnational can really bring us some fruit.
Cool. Well, we're running out of time, but I do have a couple more questions for you. And one of them that I really wanted to key in on is that you sit in a space that most of our listeners sit in, where you're at a really kind of a traditional church, and I mean that traditional church in the sense that you're organized in a traditional manner and really still kind of based on having Sunday morning worship in person and that kind of thing. So you have the in-person part of your ministry. You also have the digital part of your ministry. How do you find balance between those two different realms? Or are there ways that you have to be specific about it?
Yeah, it's really hard. And that's actually probably one of the most difficult parts of it, because I think every congregation has to be clear about your priorities. And again, there's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong way to do it. I just think clarity is just really important. For instance, for a lot of congregations, the in-person experience takes priority. And so for a lot of congregations, they start with what looks the best, what sounds the best, how can we get the best in-person experience possible? And then the online experience is sort of an addendum, or it comes second, or it's a supplement to what we do in person. But what often ends up happening is that there's a lower quality based on what happens in the room and what happens online. However, for a lot of congregations, the people that you are trying to reach, they're actually online. The people that you're trying to reach, they're not already in person. And so, again, but for some congregations, that's okay. But if you are a congregation that is intentional about growing, that you want to reach more people, that you're trying to live out in innovative ways, the Great Commission, and to be incarnational in the lives of those people who are not already connected, I think we have to do a shift in terms of our people, in terms of our time, in terms of our meetings, in terms of how we create experiences that not only benefit the people in the room, but also benefit people online. I give an example of what this looks like. So for us, when we do our communion on Sunday morning, we just tried this on Monday, Thursday. On Monday, Thursday, we have this experience where we do this impactful experience where we have people take communion together and we dim the lights but we realize that for people who are connecting with us online, dimming the lights and watching people take juice and bread is boring, it's not engaging. So we said, what about creating a separate piece where we shift from the in-person experience and then we specifically create something that our online community can participate in that feels intentional for them. And it didn't take a whole lot of money. It just took a camera and some intentionality. Because what that says is you are not just, because people always talk about they don't want people to just consume online. Well, if you don't want people to consume online, you have to create something that they can participate in. And so we have to be intentional. Again, in terms of being incarnational, so we had to create experiences that invited people to participate in, because sometimes the reason why people consume is that's all that we give them. We only give them things to consume. But I think if we give them things to connect with, to participate in. And so, again, we just shifted to a whole different place in the room. And then we spoke directly to them, which said, we know you, we see you, we love you, we care about you. and we're willing to do something extra to make you feel like that you are part of this faith community, that you're not just hovering and watching in, but you are now participating and a vital part of this faith community. And a little intentionality for people goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard the invitation to consider how do you put that online participant in the front row or in the first pew?
That's right. That's right. And how do you help the people in the room value what you're doing online? So that when you do something for the online community, they're not thinking, oh, that's for those people out there. It is, they value it enough. So now you got to start vision casting. Now you vision cast to the people in the room that they are also a part of a larger community, and that there is another 50, 100 people or 30 people who are connecting with us online, and they are just as important to the people in the room. So that when you do address them, when you do look into the camera, when you do use an example, the people in the room are not bothered by, they're doing something for them. No. This is, we're all part of a faith community, and so none of us are just watching, none of us are just consuming, but that comes through intentional vision casting and intentional strategic moves to help people see that they are a part of something larger that not only the church is doing, but something that God is doing.
Yeah, that is rich. Well, this will be the last question that I throw at you, Pastor Jay. What are you dreaming of doing in ministry next?
Yeah, that's you asked. That's an interesting question, because I think the way ministry has even changed the way I view what's next for me. And I would say part of what I think is next for me is kind of two or threefold. Number one, I think I want to do a lot more teaching and writing, consulting, and helping congregations figure this out. And I say that because I started off in ministry at a church that was really small. And I always wished that there would be other people who would be available to help to just have as a thinking partner, and to help people to do that. And I think I've been blessed enough in ministry to have small church, medium church, and large church experience. And I find joy in giving back and helping churches out. I started doing some consulting with churches called Not Just Sundays, speaking to different conferences and different people to help strategize outside of Sunday morning. So I think, as long as I'm in pastoral ministry, I think I always want to be able to give back to churches, and being in a position where I could do that. And especially in terms of, again, writing, because I do think the decline of the Sunday morning preacher is happening, and being able to impact. My wife and I just had an opportunity to write a book, and it was a great experience for us. It's around Joseph dreaming and how do we help people to dream again. And so that has been great. Came out with another book with 3 other authors called On Purpose. How do we help finding our passions through God's voice? And so those different things, I think, as long as I'm still in pastoral ministry, is finding time. I taught at CTS, finding different ways to still preach and use my voice outside of the pulpit. Again, I think the way that people consume information, and when Jesus says, go ye therefore, I don't think he meant go ye therefore on Sunday morning. Go ye therefore and preach in pulpits. It was around how do we use the spaces that we're in as a tool to help people experience the love of Jesus Christ. And I think being innovative in ways to do that. I'm excited about this next phase of ministry. I didn't go to seminary for it, but I'm excited about going into uncharted territory.
Cool. Well, thanks for helping tool us up to move into the uncharted territory of the digital spaces. Loved learning about what you have done and what you're looking forward to do as well. So thank you so much for giving us this time today.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. It's a pleasure being here, and thank you so much for the invitation. I could talk about this all day, so thanks a lot for the time and space. I appreciate it. Thanks, Brian.
Good stuff. I can't think of a better way to put a wrap on this season of Pastoring in the Digital Parish, our 6th season of the podcast. We're now going to take a break for a couple months and retool for next season. But if you want to get more Pastoring in the Digital Parish into your life and into your head, some good follow-up episodes include one called We Have a Church Live Stream. Now what? It's got more practical ideas for reaching community beyond Sunday morning. And I think season 4's evangelism through social listening would be another good follow-up episode. In this one, Pastor Jay just talked about addressing people's questions, so that evangelism through social listening episode helps us figure out what those questions are. And Nelson Masanda leads us through a process of really kind of getting our fingers on the pulse of what people care about. My name is Ryan Dunn. I'd like to thank resourceumc.org, the online destination for leaders throughout the United Methodist Church. They make this podcast possible. And of course, they host our website, pastoringinthedigitalparish.com, where you can find more online resources for ministry. I also want to thank Safer Sanctuaries for their support. Again, Safer Sanctuaries, Nurturing Trust Within Faith Communities, is a new and comprehensive resource that continues the tradition of Safe Sanctuaries ministry by building on its trusted policies and procedures. The resource contains theological grounding for the work of abuse prevention, basic guidelines for risk reduction, age-level specific guidance, and step-by-step instructions on how to develop, revise, update, and implement an abuse prevention plan. Hey, if you want to connect with the Pastoring in the Digital Parish community, check out our Pastoring in the Digital Parish group on Facebook. And you can also send me questions and ideas for future sessions at digitalparish@umcom.org. We'll be back with a new season in a couple of months. In the meantime, peace.